Hey there, it's Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
You're watching Facebook Live or YouTube Live in the screen there. And what pictures right there behind him? Pastor Joe Payton of Riverbend Church in Gainesville. Pastor, how are you?
I'm great to be on this morning.
I love those.
Appreciate you joining us.
They look like they're all baptismal pictures there.
They are. You can actually see. I don't know if you can see. There's several around here, but just kind of keeps us reminded why we do what we do.
That's awesome. And you got some young folks there, too. I always love seeing the young folks being baptized.
Yes, sir. We do.
Yeah. Awesome.
Now, congratulations are in order because 3 years ago, I think you said this week, you started pastoring there at Riverbend Church in Gainesville. And then 24 years ago, this week, I don't know how you convinced her, but she said yes.
That's right. That's right, Courtney. I twisted her arm and gave her probably all $180 I had to my name maybe at the time, and she said yes. So.
Well,
man, you were loaded.
I was loaded.
You were
kids.
You were either in the ministry or in broadcasting, one of the two. So I could tell by the $180, no doubt, right?
Sure.
Yes, sir. That's right. That's right, man.
Well, tell us about yourself. Now, 24 years ago, were you in Georgia? Were you in another state? And how this all happened?
I was. So 24 years ago, I grew up South Atlanta, Noonan area. And so been around Georgia just about my entire life. But Courtney and I met in high school, got married, honestly, way too early. I did student ministry a long time, and they all said, hey, you got married when you were young. So I was 17 when we got married, and kind of a whole interesting story that goes with that. But spent some early time running from God and his call in my life. And we had been married about 6 years when I finally, I don't know if the Lord chased me down or I just got tired of running, but we finally said, all right, God, like we want to do what you want us to do. Here we are. And she was already there long before I was. And so
isn't that usually the case with wives? They're usually before we are.
I was afraid that when I said, I feel like God's called ministry, I was afraid she was going to say, all right, I'm finally out now. But she said, I've been waiting on you. I knew God was at work. And so we didn't know what that looked like, kind of made a complete shift after, 6 or 7 years of marriage. And I was in construction and we had 2 sons at that time. And so made the shift. And I guess just kind of moment by moment for the first time in our lives, we were open to where God was taking us. When the door opened, we said yes, and we jumped. And so we would go from Noonan. I started serving in my hometown there. We moved over to downtown Augusta for 5 years.
Wow.
Incredible part of our journey. God taught us so much, great people there. And we lived in North Augusta. That's the only time we've ever lived out of the state. And then landed in Bethlehem, Georgia, before we came here for a while there. Some great friends, great ministry there. And then honestly thought we had settled in next generation ministry. Got a heart for those coming behind us, and my wife and I both. So we just kind of settled on maybe that's our life call. And about the time we got that nailed down and got our plan laid out, God kind of knocks on the door and says, hey, I want you to move to Gainesville. And so we loaded up and moved up the road. And the past 3 years, honestly, has been probably the most incredible part of our ministry journey. The piece we've enjoyed the most, the lows and the highs and all that goes with it. But it's been an incredible journey here at Riverbend.
So tell us about Riverbend Church and the heart of the church. What do you guys, what is your mission there in your community?
So our mission to lead all people to know, love, and live new life in Jesus Christ. And so that's kind of how we say it. But I'll tell you how that plays out. That's not something I had to convince people of when I came here. We're a church with about over 70 years of history, about 75 years of history in the North Gainesville area. The church was birthed out of a desire to reach kids and honestly to make the community better. Somewhere through the thread of our history, through all the pastors, that common thread has been there. Let's reach kids. So the story goes, there was a little boy who actually drowned on the Chattahoochee. Our church kind of is in the bend of the river, used to be a community here. And there was a woman, we know her as Miss Sally. I mean, nobody here knows her, but she reached out and started a church after that, reaching out to kids in her home. And that's actually what this church was birthed out of. And so making the community better, leading kids to Jesus, families. And so that root, even though many people didn't know that story till I started investigating here, the roots of that still are really relevant who we are today. You know, going after families, fight for families, trying to make our community better. Even if people don't believe what we believe, we want them to ride by and say, but they care, and they're here and they're loving us. And so honestly, we're just trying to figure out how to do that as we lead people to Jesus.
We're talking with Pastor Joe Payton of Riverbend Church. I love that story. That is, isn't it something that you're there? You've only been there for 3 years. You decide to go dig into this, and that has been kind of like the monument of some, what'd you say, 70 years that this church started, and it continues. And also look evident on the wall there. A number of those folks getting baptized are young kids. So, and I did notice that on the, I think it was on the website of the Facebook page, you guys must be doing something right, because you have numerous services throughout the morning and into the afternoon. So what do folks love about Riverbend?
I think probably the same thing we loved when we came in. Even though the church had been through transitions, the fact that we felt like we mattered to the people that were still here. Church that had, back in the 90s experienced a ton of growth, and health had just kind of, struggled through pastoral transitions and people leaving the church. The community around us looks completely different than when the church last flourished. And so I think just that fact, the church, the people who were here loved my family so well. They just kind of reached out to us and let us know we mattered. So we sort of adopted that mantra that we want people to know you matter. And I think a lot of de-churched people, a lot of people that have been just kind of doing church for a long time, and then a lot of people who know nothing about the church, that's a common desire in people's hearts, just to know, like, we see you, we hear you, we care about you. We may not believe the same things or have the same backgrounds or even come from the same denominational upbringing, but all that fades away when you just go, we see you, we hear you, we care about you. And that's something I think that is ingrained in the culture. You don't have to twist arms or convince people, because we felt that way when we first came in. People that have been here 6 or 8 weeks are now serving in our guest services, just going, hey, good morning. We want you to know you matter this morning as you come in. So I think that's the most attractive thing, and that opens the door to share Jesus.
That's awesome.
Pastor Joe, over the last 3 years that you've been there, what has God taught you personally, just working there at Riverbend Church and the folks there?
Whew, man, I probably should have made a list. Okay, so first time as a lead pastor, I'll just share, maybe there's somebody out there watching that's thinking about that. So the buck stops with you in a lot of ways, being in Next Gen and being a second or chair leader for most of my ministry and being comfortable with that. I want to look up and say, we'll let somebody else make that decision, but it's on you. I mean, that's one of the things. So get great people around you really quickly. Put men and women that love Jesus, have the calling of God on their life to come around you, because you cannot move forward on your own. I can. I'm not built that way. And so we started immediately pulling leadership teams together of people who really cared about the church, cared about the community, who would not only, I guess that old adage of hold your arms up, but or sometimes you think of it only as accountability, but it's really just encouragement, support, and wisdom that you can get. So I think that's one of the things, is put people around you. I think another thing, I've known this for years, but this is the first time I've really got to practice it. Get people on the team better than you are. When it comes to serving, there's some key volunteers in our church, honestly, that serve like staff members, and they're way better at things than I am, and I'm learning from them as a pastor. So I think that's another thing I've learned. And then, you have to stay focused as a lead pastor on next generation, or it fades away. It really does. And so it's always been my heart, but and it's a fight. It's much easier to not stay current and not stay active in our schools and active in, it's easier, but your mission starts falling by the wayside. So I think staying focused, I don't know if I had time to think about it, maybe more, but I know those things have been key. I guess the last one would just be, you learn to pray. Prayer is more of a necessity. We all say we're supposed to say we're prayer warriors, but I think you find yourself on those prayer closet moments where it's like, God, we have to have, I have to have you. I can't move forward. I don't know what to do. And so I think the necessity of prayer, the more God has allowed us to do, it's become more and more evident that we need to depend on him.
Wow.
Pastor Joe Payton of Riverbend Church in Gainesville, and Dan's got the website there, riverbendchurch.life. Over the last, gosh, I don't know, 15, 16 months, it's been crazy town, right, since COVID. How have you seen the church grow internally over the last 15, 16 months? Because, hey, it's been a challenge for all of us, right?
Yeah, I think it has for all of us, just our community, and I'm sure everywhere from friends that I've talked to. Growth was something that we've really been blessed with. We had basically almost no online presence whenever COVID was coming. We were already working towards it. It kind of fast-tracked our online presence, but really we didn't miss a beat. God sent just the right people in the right time as far as volunteers. We went off campus when COVID first hit, online only. We were able to do some drive-in services. We did everything we could to stay connected with people. And so we'd have our staff come in and write everybody in the church a card or call everybody on one day, just go through the list, just calling people. Some people go, I hadn't been to that church in 7 years. Well, you're on our list, so we called you. We called you.
Come back.
We actually had people show back up again. They're like, well, I hadn't been, so you called me, so we came. So we just loved on people. And I think, I'll be honest, I'm sure others felt this, but as you start easing back into ministry, you don't really know what the scorecard is anymore for a while. You're going, is it okay that we have half what we had today? Is it okay that, but the piece we saw though, all through COVID, is as the gospel went out, people still came to Christ throughout it. That never slowed down. So we were doing horse trough baptisms in the parking lot during COVID, right in the middle of it, just saying, hey, we'll mask up. If you feel comfortable doing this, we can wait till later. That's fine. But if not, almost everybody without fail said, no, I have to do this now. And so we were doing outdoor baptisms during that time. So even though the numbers on campus weren't the same for a while, we were still seeing the activity of the Lord. So that was the biggest growth. And I guess surprise too. And it fueled people too, to see the pictures and see the online of going, look what God's doing, even when we're not meeting. And so during that time, we were able to mobilize the whole church. We didn't have anything to focus on. So we said, how can we serve? So we had teams that were cooking meals and taking them to neighborhoods. We were setting up grills in the parking lot and doing drive-by and grab food, things that we hadn't really done before. And so when it all shook down and we finally felt like, probably early this year, we sort of were back, we had ended up in some ways doubling the number of people who were engaged in the ministry just months after COVID. And so, I know that's not everyone's story, but for us, we really didn't know. And then all of a sudden, it's like God just, when people came back, it was crazy, the influence and I guess influx of people that we saw.
That's great.
That's so good. Pastor Joe Payton of Riverbend Church in Gainesville. Real quick, what's next? We've got the rest of 2021. What's next for you guys?
Well, we have begun praying. We're not a huge campus here where we are, and so we've been praying about what's next for us as far as how do we continue to influence and go out. So one of those things is we're going to go further beyond our local neighborhood here and press further into our community. And so Gainesville and Hall County, we're going after schools that are a little further away and just saying, hey, we're here. We want to serve you this year. How can we do that? We have a ministry that's sort of the reach arm of our church called Project Hope. And so through Project Hope, we hope this year to see 100% of the people engaged in the church serve somehow locally this year through that. The other option we're praying through right now and praying for the opportunity is kind of made the decision that we want to, stay located where we are and dive in here, but to begin praying about multi-site across our area. And so that we really believe that's our next move, even though there are a lot of details we don't know. We have begun just to pray about that as a church. And if that opportunity opens, we would love to partner or see a merger happen somewhere, in our general vicinity And so that feels like that's next now, to kind of take this culture and multiply it to maybe an area where it's not happening. So we don't know where that is yet, but if God opens the door, we're ready to step through.
Awesome.
Pastor Joe Payton of Riverbend Church in Gainesville. Pastor, thank you for your time. We got to take a break. We appreciate you and your passion, your heart. God's blessing is all over you guys.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Hey, let's take a break. We'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.